Hi everyone, it's the Assyrian Priestess with you. I hope this finds you well. I am going to start playing around with creating some short videos to share with you some of the motifs from the Assyrian myth, the descent of Ishtar to the underworld. It's mostly what I do and what I'm interested in. And I feel like this myth that is thousands of years old is really rich and complex and has a lot to offer us today. So the theme of today's video is going to be the feminine psyche. And in particular, I'm going to introduce you to the concept of the dark feminine. And I feel like for those who are interested in goddess mythologies and sort of interpretations of ancestral mythologies, you would have heard a lot of reference to this term. Now, one of the things I'm hoping to do today is to actually challenge a misconception about the dark feminine as this like evil, malevolent figure. And I think obviously like when we use modern day morality and thinking, it's easy to jump into a binary split between good and evil. One thing I've learned through my research in Assyrian cosmologies is there was less of a focus on good and evil and more of a focus on order versus chaos. And so there wasn't really this concept of evil being bad, because both good people and not good people, or good energies and not good energies, were actually in fact capable of being both. And I want you to really take this with you because it offers a more sophisticated and nuanced analysis of the psyche. It also avoids us lumping ourselves into, oh, I do this, so I must be good, or so-and-so does that, so she must be bad. So let's dive in. So in the myth, we see the goddess of the above world, Ishtar, answering a call to descend to the underworld. And in one version of the myth, she puts her ear to the ground. In another version of the myth, she is determined to go. She receives an invitation to descend to the underworld and she knocks at the gate and of course is met by Namtar, one of the key characters in the myth, who directly reports to Queen of the Underworld to let her know that the goddess Ishtar is at the door and is demanding entry. Now, the goddess Ereshkigal is not impressed with this and advises Namtar to put Ishtar through the trials of each gate, as is the law of the underworld. So already now we have a myth that has two key feminine figures: Ishtar, goddess of the above world, Ereshkigal, goddess of the underworld. And each sort of is a sovereign of her domain. Now, why does Ishtar descend? Well, there's different interpretations on why. Some say that she is attending the funeral of the Bull of Heaven, which we know in the Epic of Gilgamesh, she was sort of culpable in having murdered. In the Epic of Gilgamesh, the goddess Ishtar asks the sky gods to send the Bull of Heaven as her champion against Gilgamesh, and he is then slain. So there is a level of culpability here on her behalf. Others, one being a professor at Sydney University, Louise Pryke, suggests Ishtar is descending to the underworld so she can actually seize power for herself. And so this is an important part of her role as an above-world goddess because she represents the element of strategy and planning to get something. So let's kind of look at the two goddesses archetypally. So we have goddess of the above world, which I'm going to call the light feminine, and the feminine that is seen. So by light, I don't mean lightweight or light as in bright, although she was tasked with ruling heaven. So there is a celestial element to Ishtar. And she was also known as Venus, the North Star. But what I feel like is a better interpretation of a light goddess or a light feminine is one that is seen. The parts of the feminine psyche that we show, that are seen, that are hailed as acceptable to be shown. Now, she is the goddess of love and war. And so in her role as a warrior goddess, she's actually quite strategic. She is also full of rage and anger. And we see this at every gate. She demands and commands the gate to be opened, or she threatens retribution. So we see a goddess of rage, strategy, war, and retribution. Ishtar is also a goddess of desire, of lust, of the urge to be. And this is her role as a fertility goddess in its purest form. So unlike other fertility goddesses, Ishtar is never seen birthing or suckling children. She's not a birth-giving goddess. She is a goddess of desire, of the urge, and in a lot of Assyrian rituals in antiquity, she was called upon to bring fertility to the land. So this also, I suppose, links her to the role of the light or the seen feminine, the feminine energy that knows what she wants, knows how to get it, and desires it deeply. Now, this doesn't mean it's good or bad or other. This is just what the seen feminine was in the Assyrian landscape. So let me know what you think. Now, the dark feminine, on the other hand, and I know that in modern times, our first thought for dark feminine goes to something unseemly, something taboo, all the stuff that we repress. Now, that is one interpretation, and I suppose it's part of the story. But I actually want to encourage you to think about it as what is unseen, parts of the feminine psyche that we don't show. That may include things that are taboo or things that are unseemly, but it's not necessarily just that. So where Ishtar rules the above world, Ereshkigal rules the underworld. She is the goddess of the great below. In fact, this is the literal translation of her name in the Akkadian language. Now, as opposed to strategy, Ereshkigal is about surrendering. When we think of her role in the deep, dark underworld, the crystalline waters of the deep, she surrenders to a role that not many would undertake, and that is as caretaker of the dead. This is the realm of the ancestors. Now, as opposed to the rage and the, that we see in the goddess Ishtar in the myth, Ereshkigal is always quite calm, and she calls upon the gates and the Anunnaki to be the upholders of the law. So there's an element of justice here, but it's this sort of calm justice. It's a calm surrender to the natural order of things. And I think there's a lot there that we could unpack in further videos. She is a goddess of deep compassion. So one thing that has always struck me as important to share is the dark feminine psyche is actually compassionate. And it's often the part we don't want to see. Again, we are so interested in this split between good and bad, positive and negative. We always think the dark feminines must be negative, must be evil, when in fact that is a trait also and often displayed by above world or light feminine psyches, or people who more lean to that archetypally. Ereshkigal does have an element of seduction though, and There is a really famous myth. We know a lot about the goddess Ereshkigal. There were small cults in her favor, but of course she wasn't as popular as Ishtar because she is a goddess of death, so quite a heavy goddess to work with. But she is a goddess of seduction, and we see this in the myth, the marriage of Ereshkigal to Nergal, which again is all available. If you're interested, let me know and I can point you to where you can listen to podcasts about that myth. She is a goddess of death, but death in the sense of eternity and of immortality. And as I mentioned, the archetypal ancestral realm. So why is this important today? Well, I feel like in modern times, there's a lot going on in terms of gender politics and who we are and how we represent ourselves, and what gender means anymore. And I feel like there are some certain answers we can find in this myth between the two goddesses. So tell me which goddess is your favorite and why, and which archetype you lean more towards, if any at all. And as always, I will leave you with my love and courage until we meet again. Bye for now.